Hari Yashodanandana Brajajana Rajana Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitanyena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah. I was born in the darkest ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes. With the torch of knowledge, I offer my respectful obeisance unto him. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's nice to be on board with you. Today is Canto 1, Chapter 7, the son of Drona punished, and it's text 45. I guess we should go through it line by line. Is that what you normally do?
Yeah, really.
All right. Sa Isha Bhagavan Drona
Shava Bhagavandrona
Praja Rupena Vartate
Ajarupena Bhartate
Tasyat Manor Ridam Patyaste
Ramdistomi Pasyate
Manvagad Virasu Kripi
Manama Bhagavastu Tipi
Saha He Esha certainly Bhagavan Lord Dronacharya Prajarupena in the form of his son Ashvatthama. Bharatate is existing. Tasya his Atmanaha of the body. Ardham half. Patni wife. Aste living. Na not. Anvagat undertook. Virasu having the son present. Kripi the sister of Kripacharya. Translation. He, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati with him because she had a son. Please repeat. He, Dronacharya,
He Dronacharya
is certainly still existing,
still existent,
being represented by his son.
being represented by his son.
His wife Kripi did not undergo a sati.
His wife Kripi didn't undergo a sati
with him because she had a son.
Because she has a son.
Purport was Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The wife of Dronacharya, Kripi, is a sister of Kripacharya, a devoted wife who is, according to revealed scripture, the better half of her husband, is justified in embracing voluntary death along with her husband if she is without issue. But in the case of the wife of Dronacharya, she did not undergo such a trial because she had her son, the representative of her husband. A widow is a widow only in name if there is a son of her husband existing. So in either case, Ashwatthama was the representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashwatthama would be like killing Dronacharya. That was the argument of Draupadi against the killing of Ashwatthama. Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishnaprasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. Hare Krishna. This is a very exciting portion of the Bhagavatam, where it's really a tale of vengeance and moral situations. We can see that the thought process of a Kshatriya is very interesting. There are always so many considerations. And when I say of a Kshatriya, I'm talking about Kshatriya men and Kshatriya women. I mean, Arjuna, he had practically pinned down Ashwatthama, who was an infanticide. You know, he was a killer of children. And by most standards, if you go around the world, practically any culture, they would say that a man who kills children, even one child, his life should be taken. He deserves capital punishment. I believe in some of the states in America. I know there's different rules depending on which state you're in, but I believe capital punishment still goes on in some places. And then we also know that in the laws of Manu, which is all about the Manu Samhita, part of the Vedas, that there is support of capital punishment. And when you think about the character of Ashwatthama, you know, he was such, you know, he was so lowly in his mentality that anyone would say, this guy deserves to go. We must do away with him. What comes to my mind about doing away with someone, even a child, was when Vidura was telling his elder brother, Dhritarashtra, that because there was a forecasting of, there were a lot of ill omens at the birth of Dhritarashtra's eldest son. There were all kinds of signs and symbols indicating that this child, if he's allowed to survive, there will be a natural disaster. There will be war, and many people would suffer because of this child's existence. So the advice or the counsel that was given by Vidura, the younger brother of the blind king Dhritarashtra, was do away with him, sacrifice him, spare so many other people's lives. Do that. Just do it. And Chanakya Pandit, the moralist, he once said that for the sake of the village, he may have to sacrifice one person. So that's the spirit, that's the mentality. That was the logic or the way of thinking on behalf of Vidura. And most people would be thinking along those lines that, yeah, here's a person guilty of killing not one, but 5 children. That man would be considered a sicko, psycho. Do away with him, you know, at least lock him up, at least do that. So Arjuna, who was a man of great sensitivity and good reasoning also, always giving a lot of considerations. He held Ashwatthama, looked back to see, what do you want me to do with him? What should I do with him? And he's looking for counsel from his superiors and also from his wife, Draupadi. Now we know from this chapter, or we are informed here, that Draupadi had her considerations. And her considerations were that I lost my children, and I don't want another woman to have to go through what I had to go through. It's, you know, she's being extremely sensitive. Somebody might analyze this scenario and think that maybe she's being overly sensitive. You know? How can you let such a man live in this world? He's a cause of, he's a threat to society. If he's done it once, he'll do it again. Who is to say he wouldn't do it again? So Prabhupada explains the nature of a woman is very soft, and I think everybody can appreciate that. Everybody loves their mother very much because of her gentleness and her kindness. But then some people might look at it and say, this is really extreme now. The emotionalism is very high. I mean, I am not a personal supporter of feminism, and I'm not the other way either. I'm just a person in the middle. But I remember one devotee saying just before I was giving a class, why she said it, I don't know. She said, men have not developed their emotions. And I just kind of flashed back, and well, maybe it didn't flash back. I said, well, maybe women have overextended themselves in the emotional department. So when it comes to emotions, like everybody has symptoms, it's very natural. And Prabhupada, in his purports, he supports the, the subtle feelings that Arjuna has, why he wouldn't take up arms, why he was so intimidated. And the reasons were, well, there is my grandfather, and there's also my martial arts teacher. I owe them everything. I owe them my life. And there are my cousins, after all, on the other side, at least 100 of, mean-spirited people, but after all, they are my cousins. And his consideration was, with this, what could be a holy bath or a bloody bath, rather, just sets a precedent. Where do we draw the line if we're going to be killing family? Where does it end? This kind of action. And so the thing is that the Kshatriyas in the days of Vedic yore, they were very sensitive. They were making serious analysis of all scenarios, and there's always a consideration that you can look at every individual case. There may be general policies laid down, like say if you take a life, your life must be taken, etc., like that. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. That mentality can work. I believe it was Gandhi who said something like that. Everything's an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. There won't be any eyes left. There won't be any teeth left. There is nothing left. But the consideration is, what's the next life all about? What's it going to look like, the next existence? So anyways, it's very interesting because Draupadi, from her heart, was feeling, we cannot kill this man. We cannot, because he has a mother. And that was her consideration. And yet Krishna also had his consideration. His consideration was, well, he deserves to go. He's a Brahmabandhu. He is not a Brahmin. His father is, most definitely, by his actions, but his son is not. He is an affiliate. He's a Brahminical affiliate, but he is not acting like a Brahmin. He's misbehaved, so he deserves to go. He should be, as they used to do in Vedic traditions, there would be decapitation, decapitation programs. And so Krishna had that consideration. And then the opinions went around. I guess they went to round robin, as we say sometimes in meetings. Let's hear from everyone. Everyone give their input. And so they did. Yudhishthira had something to say, Bhishma, and so there were so many considerations. In the end, Ashwatthama was allowed to live. And as far as I'm to understand, Ashwatthama is still existing somewhere in the world. And it's totally understandable because we live in Kali Yuga when darkness seems to prevail. It was in a similar kind of parallel situation. The personality Kali had beaten a bull mercilessly and left him with just one leg that was, let's say, held intact, and was also on the verge of being injured. And so that is very merciless. And the king who came around Parikshit, again, the person who is there to restore and do what's righteous and demonstrate ultimate justice. He was ready to put an end to the life of the personality Kali, and but there was another consideration, and that consideration was that Kali took a humble position, and he said, "Don't have mercy, spare me, spare me. I'll do better, but spare me. Don't take my life." And so this Kshatriya king Parikshit, he decided, okay, I'll spare your life, but I don't want you to be just anywhere. I want you to be limited in your movements. And so there was some condition, and the term, or what do you want to call it, the clause, the sentence term was, I'll let you go where there's going to be some gold. And wherever there's gold, usually you're going to find that there's going to be some trouble and disturbance. So Ashwatthama exists to this day. And that's why we have, one of the reasons why we have so many problems in this particular day and age. This is a feature of Kali Yuga, disturbance. First canto of the Bhagavatam talks about Manda Sumanda Matayo, Manda Bhagya Yupadruta. So this people are Manda, that means slow to spiritual life, slow to being able to sort things out. Just like we hear about a lot of court cases in this day and age, and they drag on for a long time, trying to figure out who is guilty of a crime and who is not. And then we see that a lot of cases of people who were actually innocent were, let's say, executed, put to the electric chair, whatever. And then later it's found out that they were actually innocent and someone else came through. So it's an age of confusion where people have a very small sense of discernment. Prabhupada uses the word discriminating in the sense of not being judgmental over individuals, or not being biased towards a group of people. But when he uses the word discriminate, it means to sort things out and go for justice. Words like to be discreet, or to have a discerning, methodology in your life. So in the Vedic system, Brahmins had their codes that they were to follow. They had their yamas and their niyamas. That means the things that you do that are positive, and there are things that you avoid doing that are on the negative side, karmically. And then the Kshatriyas, they were permitted, because they're people of passion and they're expected to do passionate things. Their codes were a little different from the, rules and regulations and a line of ethics that were to be followed by the Brahmins. The Kshatriyas were given a little more license to do a few more things. Kshatriyas were known to party. Kshatriyas were known to use weapons. Kshatriyas were known to also gamble on certain levels. Kshatriyas were known to have many women, especially if they're asking for, say, company or protection. And then the Vaishyas, the other classification of people, there was less, let's say, less stringency in regards to following certain principles. And then when it comes to the Shudra, class of people, which is where most people fit in category-wise, there was more leniency. So the Brahmins were to uphold the highest principles. They were the most disciplined, but every group had some discipline. They were to follow some discipline. And this is what's kind of lacking in Kali Yuga. In a capitalistic democratic state, everything is about, stimulating your senses. And there's very little scope for discipline, self-discipline. My observation about the way the world is that wherever there is, like North American culture, I know we've talked about this before, we're very loose. We're just following the routine of the Romans. It was like self-indulgent, self-destructive worlds. And then in other cultures where there's a little bit more discipline, people have a certain power and strength. And we can see that's happening in North America. People who have a background in discipline, they seem to come up and buy up real estate, and they maybe have some stronger values in general, family values. So slowly there's like a subtle takeover. It's hard to hear that, hard to swallow that reality, but that's certainly what's going on, and that's what you see that's going on. So again, principles are important. Prabhupada always talked about principles and standards. And so this is what's really come up in this particular chapter about principles that have some kind of basis, because people come from varying different levels of training and backgrounds. So it's very interesting. And Vishnu comes out, Krishna manifests as Vishnu when he says, okay, give me your opinion. He puts out his hand to this individual, and then he goes to that individual, puts out hands, and this way, 4 arms were needed. Say, okay, let's settle the matter. And Krishna can do that. He can interchange from 2 hands to 4 hands, as we see in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, in the universal manifestation, the Virat Rup, that amazing cosmic display of power. And the Lord manifested multiple arms and hands. And then that was just got to be too gruesome looking for Arjuna. And Krishna, was always, concedes to the needs of the devotees and listens to their queries and accommodates their cravings. Krishna took away that image, or let's say reduced his number of arms to now 4. And even for that, Arjuna said, Krishna, I really just love you with your 2-arm form. Please, can we have that exhibition of yourself? And so Krishna, again, who caters to the wants of the devotees, decided to go back into the 2-arm form, the one that Arjuna was so much familiar with. We are encouraged to actually become familiar with Krishna as the 2-armed individual, as opposed to Vishnu, and even as opposed to the multi-manifestation we find in the cosmic form. They're all good. Like in our tradition, we all say, this is good, but there's a better and there's a best. So when it comes to good, any form of Krishna is fine, even his cosmic form, and the form of nature is also nice. It's beautiful. But better than looking at nature, the trees, the skies, the ocean, so on, is recognizing that Krishna is behind it. His personalism is behind the wonderful manifestation of his nature, which Prabhupada said it's his nature. Everyone has a certain nature, and the nature that we look at, Mother Nature, it's Krishna's nature. When we look at the 4-arm form of Vishnu, it invokes a kind of reverence, respect, and that's fine. But when it comes to, our darshan, or our viewing of the two-armed form of Krishna, there is reverence, no doubt. We're all encouraged to offer our dandavats before the deities. But then there's also sweetness that we see in him, glancing at his feet and going up finally to his smiling face invokes a certain sweeter sentiments. So when we're talking about good, better, and best, the manifestation of Krishna, the Govindam Adi Purusham, the original person, is the preference of the devotees who want to capture the sweet side of the Lord. It's preference. So preference is there. It's individual. I understand that, Prabhupada was sitting down, he was eating this one particular Leela where he's taking his lunch meal, and there's so many different preps on the thali, on the plate. And then some devotees are watching to see what's he eating first, what's he eating second, what's he eating third, and anticipating to follow exactly what Prabhupada does, because whatever he does is perfect, right? So if you follow the perfect, you actually may become perfect. So there was a question about that, and Prabhupada actually responded, it's a matter of preference, It's sort of like personal, individual preference. So, and I'm not saying that there aren't rules or guidelines. Maybe you want to take your ginger in the beginning to ignite what the stomach needs in order to accept all the different preparations that you're going to give to your tummy. So there are preferences, there is individuality. We see individuality here and how everyone is, let's say, analyzing from their own perspective. When Krishna and Balaram went to the wrestling arena in Mathura, all those spectators that were there saw Krishna differently because they're individuals. And that's what's the beautiful thing about bhakti, is that it is a movement that encourages diversity. And while there is diversity, we also have to acknowledge that there is also oneness. So unity and diversity is our philosophy propounded by especially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's the philosophy of Krishna. We find it throughout the Gita, the philosophy of oneness but difference. We cannot really say that there's one way to execute service. There may be different ways, but the oneness factor that comes out from all of this exhibition of bhakti is that we're doing it to please Krishna. And Prabhupada wrote a letter to devotees saying that in the spiritual world, the gopis also have their differences. There's the right wing and left wing gopis. They have their different approaches and different ways of doing things. And how do you resolve these apparent differences or clashes, apparent clashes? And Prabhupada says everything's resolved by the fact that everyone's directing everything to Krishna. Krishna becomes the focal point, and that's the main thing. And so there are, well, when it comes to our philosophy of Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva, here's one way that we can analyze it. It is said, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kiva. Kalona Stevana Stevana Stevana. It is said there that really one is supposed to just concentrate on chanting, glorifying Krishna. Yeah. So there is no other way, no other way, no other way. It seems to be very exclusivistic. However, at the same time, the same book, the same culture says, oh, chanting is good, but also hearing is good. And also serving at the lotus feet of the Lord is good. And surrendering everything to the Lord. There are 9 different approaches. They're all good. They're all one, you can say. But out of all the oneness, we can appreciate that chanting takes some predominance because in the Kali Yuga, we're left with that strong message that in Kali Yuga, we resort to chanting. That's a very important thing. With chanting, you are benefiting yourself, you are benefiting many other forms. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur had a discussion, and Chaitanya was asking the question, playing the role as a student. So, what is this thing about chanting? The sound, the Shabda Brahman, the spiritual sound vibration is very powerful, is it not? And does it do anything for the vegetation, the more humble forms of life? And Haridas Thakur confirmed, yes, the chanting is so powerful that even the grass and the lowly, humble creatures get benefit from that sound vibration. And we know that, plants they're sensitive, just like people are sensitive, plants are also sensitive. So we can consider that scientist Bose, he proved it that plants have a way to respond to different kinds of sound vibration. Now, I was raised in a farming community, and I was raised on a farm myself. I used to get up in the morning and milk a cow, and we didn't have a radio in our barn, but a lot of farmers that I knew in our area, they would play a radio. They have a radio in the barn, and that was just, that was kind of high tech to do that. Now, why would you run some kind of electricity to a barn with a bunch of animals and play music? And the reason was because when it comes to cows and bulls, they become calmed by music, and a certain kind of music, of course. I mean, in the 50s, and I grew up in early 60s, the music was very sattvic compared to now. We didn't have heavy rock until Steppenwolf or some group like that came around. But it was like soft crooner music, and that usually the farmers played. And then the cows, they were more content, and they would be eased off to give more milk. So sound has an amazing impact on people. And when sound is of a spiritual quality, then we are at a total advantage. So, chanting Krishna's name or going over his pastimes, I mean, this is a pastime of the Lord. We are glorifying Krishna by going over this, even though there's lots of intrigue and notions of violence here and aggressiveness. Still, Krishna comes out to be the hero in the end of these stories of conflict and battle. And that's what's important, that Krishna is satisfied in the end. These are his dramas, these are his productions. So, personally, I don't have any much admiration towards Ashwatthama and his actions. Would Drona really be happy with the way he handles these particular matters? Killing children and so on like that. We were talking about Putana. She had a reputation, like some witches in Vedic times, they had a reputation for being not nice to children. So I think in most cultures, people would really shun such individuals who were abusive towards children, whether it's psychological, physical, or sexual. I don't know if there's another level, but at least on 3 levels, being hard towards children is it's really a great felony. It's very nasty, and it should not be tolerated. So those are some of the principles that we believe in, The first canto of the Bhagavatam also talks about what are the forms of life that need protection. And of course, women as a group need protection. Children need protection. Older folks need protection. Brahminical people need protection. Animals need protection. And that it was the duty of the king. It was the dharma of the king to see to it that these, let's say, dependent forms of life are to be given that protection that they deserve. So those are just some points I wanted to make. And maybe I was told the cutoff time could be at 8, but we could drag it on a little bit extra if you like. So we are at the stage where we are at, and perhaps some of you have some thoughts on this pastime, this particular Leela, which is very interesting.
So if anyone has a question, they can all comment. And Damodar Swami, if you wanted to, you can unmute, make a comment or ask a question.
I unmuted myself, and now you're all subjected to my growling voice. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome, Swami.
Accept my humble obeisance.
Joining us last night, we also were treated. Hare Krishna. Yeah, maybe I'll go in the other room because the Wi-Fi connection is a little choppy here. You're breaking up.
Yeah,
I should be a little better now. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you anyway, yeah.
All right, no, I came in the other room where the modem is.
There's no difference.
Yeah, last night we were also treated to an illustrious personality. Jayadvaita Swami gave class, of course, by Zoom, but everyone was together and watched him on a monitor here in this room. So I don't know. I'm so distracted and so obsessed with ridiculous external, unfolding of things. But one thing you said that kind of connected with my curiosity, to be euphemistic about such things, is you mentioned something that due to merit, people buy up real estate and there's a subtle takeover. I mean, what kind of people were you referring to, and what kind of takeover were you referring to?
Well, I was talking about discipline. I was highlighting discipline, and where cultures where there's more practice of discipline, you see people just buy on the merit of their morals, and they have a certain strength or power about them. So there's, just people acquiesce, they acquire land, real estate, and just start to, they're just showing a certain kind of.
Mark Swami is just finishing his class now.
Yeah, we're just talking about certain people from other parts of the world are showing their might by just on the strength of their discipline. That was the point. So I was just supporting discipline. That
I see. Okay, so I shouldn't read into the phrase that you used when you said there's a subtle takeover. I won't read between the lines there. I'll just accept it that it was limited in scope to a particular segment of society. Well, as you were saying, I'm sorry.
I just want to sort of reinforce what I was saying, that, we live in a very self-indulgent kind of culture at the moment. And it's like self-destructiveness when you look at the symptoms, family breakups, people so addicted to drugs and sexual habits. And it's a real display of demoralized, culture that we live in. And because people have walked so far away from Dharma, and what triggered that was the habits of Ashwatthama, what he did by killing the sons sleeping sons of the Pandavas. And so we have so many examples of degradation in Kali Yuga that go almost unchecked. And it's something to be concerned about, you know. And Prabhupada's, you know, view of the world and, you know, the West and also the East, you know, he was seeing a drop of moral values. And so his intent was, let's try to pick things up. Let's try to help elevate the consciousness of people. And so his idea, he came with a revolutionary spirit, let's change things. Revolution usually implies, let's get aggressive, let's shout, let's make lots of noise, let's, you know, have sticks and stones and or weapons of lethal kind. You know, not that kind of approach, but a very soft, subtle, and devotional approach. He believed firmly in to turn things around. That even in Kali Yuga, his firm belief was that in Kali Yuga we can have elements of you know, the age of goodness. That's what I was trying to highlight.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
Very nice class, to the point, great class. I just wanted to, and the purport says sati, that the woman has. So I was talking to somebody and preaching, and he said, no, this your culture is too extreme. Nobody can follow in the whole world. Even the woman has to commit suicide and the fire. So this is how you are preaching these things. Can you explain?
Well,
Can you comment?
yeah, I would make a comment. First of all, we're talking about practices that were executed in bygone ages. So, you know, it's something that's in reference to today. But we are talking about, you know, people sacrificing themselves so they would not be humiliated, you know. I mean, a woman would sometimes take that position. She didn't want the humiliation of being an object by the enemy. You know, that was like the ultimate humility. And so, in order to stand up for her family and show that she was committed throughout her whole life, she would, you know, like say, enter into the fire, just like her husband probably entered into the fire of warfare to protect his people. You know? So, I mean, when a man walks into, you know, like maybe not a fire, but a whole, let's say, swords, you know, a gamut of swords that may pierce his body. It's like entering into a fire. That's his sacrifice. So the Kshatriya woman, we're talking about Kshatriyas, it wasn't for everybody.
Okay.
The Kshatriya woman would enter into fire to avoid the humiliation, you know, and as a way to say, I'm not surrendering to your corruptedness, to your aggression. I don't buy it. So that was her firm, that showed a human dignity for the male and the female. I mean, one time I gave a class at one of the universities in Toronto, and it was a class full of nurses, okay?
Oh my God.
All of the nurses, but they were all women. They were all, except for the teacher. The teacher was a male teacher. So somebody asked about this sati rite. Well, tell us a little bit about this. And here I'm talking about, you know, just sitting 30 women in front of me. And most of them didn't know what the sati rite was. But the student who brought me in was a young Sikh woman. And so she knew something about it, right? Because Sikhs have that Kshatriya spirit. It's part of their culture to protect. They were there to protect the Hindus. So anyway, somebody asked me that question. Well, tell us a little bit about a woman sacrificing herself in the fire. And I said, well, just like, and just like what I explained to you, it showed it was her dignity. Her husband was lost to the enemy. She didn't want to be exploited by the enemy. And so she decided to go in to join her husband journey, like the Titanic. You know?
Yeah, Bhakti Mark Swami, can I just say something about Jayadwaj's question about the sati, right?
Sure you can.
I'm sorry to be so intrusive, but we're running out of time, and I just wanted to get my 2 cents in, as usual. You're talking when you're responding to the rationale of the sati right in terms of not being humiliated. Doesn't it have a much more general application, and that it was just that the woman cannot bear? It's not just a question of false ego or being humiliated, but the woman in Vedic culture was so attached to her husband that she couldn't bear separation. She'd rather enter the fire of the funeral pyre than bear the separation. So she can actually be with her husband by entering the fire. And I also just wanted to suggest that when you mention, well, it's for bygone ages. Well, obviously, Prabhupada in Bhagavatam, he mentions that it became, maybe in his day, 50 years earlier, it became a forced, process. So it was legally prohibited. And Prabhupada agreed that that's good that it's legally prohibited because it shouldn't be forced. But even today, I'm not saying we recommend it or anything, but even today, like when Archie entered the fire, she was glorified for her courage and her dedication to her husband by the demigods or the wives of the demigods. So my point is that the principle is still there. The application is extremely problematic in Kali Yuga, and it even had become a forced affair, which is absurd. But the point is that the principle is universal, that the attachment that a woman should have for her husband, if it's so great that she'd rather enter fire, that's not only to avoid being humiliated, that's actually glorious. It's considered glorious. Now we people in the modern age say, well, it's glorious. People, the woman commits suicide. But if we understand a little bit more depth the Vedic culture, then it's actually, we can understand how it's glorious. Anyway, I just wanted to
I made that point. I made that point that she wants to be with her husband. I did say that.
Okay, I got lost because you were really stressing something about not being humiliated and so. All right, anyway, that's okay.
Yeah, she wouldn't have room for another man, an aggressive, individual. She was attached to her husband. Yeah, I did mention that.
I see. So that's a way that she can avoid being unprotected. Avoid being unprotected is what you meant, right?
Ragini Mataji? You can hear.
Dandavat Pranam Maharaj, Pada Namaskaram.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I was going to comment on Damodar Maharaj saying that, see, but in Vedas, we have other examples that it is not that there's just the separation of the husband, but women are very strong. Even if the husband died, if she had children, she took over the responsibility of the husband also, like Kunti and Madri. Madri went away for Sati, but Kunti, look at Kunti, she did not give up the responsibilities. It is a mixture of, when it comes to Sati, it's a mixture of everything. Yes, humiliation, and also like they never, no matter how much they are attached to their husbands, but if there is a responsibility of raising kids or something else, they did not go away to Sati. So Madri went, but Kunti didn't go. And moreover, in spite of that, Madri's children also Kunti had to raise. So it's not, I don't know if I'm disagreeing with humble request, but it is not that, it's not just the, I cannot live with my husband, so I'm going to die. It's not that way, I feel.
It gets a little complicated. But, I think just to draw a line to conclusion, if that's okay, because we're running out of time on this point, that we are a very practical kind of culture. What went on in previous ages, like Maharaj was saying, the idea about commitment and attachment was very strong, and that should never be forgiven. But the way to display that is different in this day and age. So we are a tradition that's adjustable. We are pliable, and so that should be admired. So you might take stories of extremities, but in this day and age, we're very practical. But just like say, if you're, your son is on drugs or he impregnates a girl, you're not necessarily going to reject him. Or someone that does something that's embarrassment to the family, you're not necessarily going to disown them, but you will encourage them in the devotional processes that are prescribed for this day and age. So what was at one time applicable, what worked, may not be applicable in this day and age. So if you study our scriptures very well, Mr. Curiosity, then you will see that we have made many, many adjustments, and yet we hold on to the basic principles. That's what I mean.
That's nice. Very nice.
We are, the problem is with a lot of religious traditions where they, whatever it was in bygone ages, they still hold on to it to this
Yeah.
day. It's not applicable anymore, And so we're known to, in our movement, we are taught by our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, that we have to adjust, like Prabhupada gave initiation to women and let them go on the altar. And, in this way, he was very adjustable. And he even said, we can wear regular clothes or civilian clothes if we have to share Krishna consciousness, time, place, and circumstance. I think that's what we have to tell people, You hold on to the main values. The principles are not to be altered or to be compromised, but your presentation or your application may be a little different according to circumstances. Just like, because sometimes you hear devotees say, "Oh, we made so many devotees in 1973 because we did things like this and that and this and that." And I reflect a little bit on how we were. I don't think you'll attract a lot of people if you do everything that we did then to today. You'll turn off a lot of people. So we've learned to adjust a little bit to the time, place, as Prabhupada did. We have an obligation to just bend, as he did. But for us, Krishna's always God and always will be God. And I will always be a spirit, and I will never change the philosophy to say that I'm this body.
Yeah. Basic things, and we can tell the people we don't do these things anymore. This was bygone, and right now, and we are 60 years on business, and we never did even one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like in the early days, devotees dressed up as Santa Claus and then they collected money. And the Christians in particular were saying, well, he's kind of like our icon. He's our deity. So you're just being deceptive. And we kind of admitted to that. It wasn't the nice, right thing to do. We were not straightforward and upfront. So I remember telling a whole class, and somebody asked, well, what about being dressed up as Santa Claus? And I said, well, we don't do that anymore. And there were 600 people in the hall. They laughed. And they just appreciated the honesty. We know it's a mistake, and we're young, and we're new movement, and we were a bit foolish. And they just like when you're honest, you show integrity.
Thank you very much. Nice. Very nice answer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of us look like Santa Claus, like with our whiter hair, and our physique isn't what it used to be when we were robust looking, and we could probably make good Santa Clauses, but we don't do it as a way to raise money for our temples.
Yeah.
All right. So does anyone else have a question?
I have a little comment to make.
Go right ahead, Prabhu.
Thank you, Miraj, for your class association. Your class is always appreciated, agreeable, etc. Thank you very much. And one comment, and it's a prop considered to be ISCA Miami Outreach, that one of the projects, at least me or from our understanding, is that we're open to all classes, however they want to practice the Ardha Bhakti Yoga, whether it be through traditional dress or traditional ways, or whether it be through other ways. And one of the objectives that I'm trying to go through, and I'm sure others as well, is to try to harmonize with the different detailed realizations that different devotees have, and try to just come together. Just like one point that His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj was making yesterday about the most dangerous thing is a mad elephant offense, is Vaishnava Parad. So it seems like everybody has their own realizations, especially these days, of how to serve Krishna best. But at the same time, there's certain basic, most important, as a chapter 6 in Nectar Devotion describes, but a chapter 6 basic devotional principles that's important, but not let the details overtake one and try to create that, separate. But anyways, I just wanted to put that in. If you're willing to chastise me for saying something like that, you're more than welcome. So.
Well, I think I agree with you. Yeah, I don't think we're disputing what you're saying. I appreciate your comments very much. And that's what's nice about our philosophy, the Achincha Beta Beta Tattva, that there is room for diversity, different approaches, and at the same time, the goal is to get people to come to Krishna. Different presentations can be made because there are many different kinds of people, and when we talk about Varnashram Dharma and its implementation, I think that people, our devotees, our members who represent Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, very generously, they should be allowed to speak in their own way to their own people that they can relate to in their own fashion. I think that's, if we're ever going to have Varna and Ashram develop, is that first of all, the oneness factors, that everyone's a soul struggling in this world. And then how we bring them around will be done according to individual needs. Like if I'm going to talk about Krishna consciousness to a 3-year-old, I'm going to, my vocabulary will be, to accommodate the child, will be reduced. But if I'm going to speak to an intellectual, because I'm not one myself, I'll probably spend all the time listening to that person, and then inserting a little bit of philosophy, which I figure would be appropriate for the situation. So, Varna and ashram is everywhere. It's all over the place. For some people, they're going to accept more our style of life. If you're in a room full of corporate guys, they might be happy if you're dressed in a suit and tie and you're speaking their kind of lingo, but that's not me. But some people are good at that. We have to be very flexible, and always apply Achincha Beta Beta Tattva. Prabhupada wrote a famous letter to Kirtanananda, which was meant for everybody. I want all of my students to come every year and to discuss. I want our leaders to discuss how to apply oneness but difference, unity and diversity. That's very important. So there isn't one way of just serving Krishna. There's many different ways. I hope that's on topic.
Yeah, it's on top. And also one thing that reminded me of this is because of course this could be mundane, but at the same time we can see that right now in the United States there's so much, how do you say, disunity. I'm talking about in the American materialistic politics.
The polarity.
Yeah, so much polarity, and it seems like it's sort of like people are putting so much details and details to overcome the main principles. And of course, this is mundane, but I'm just trying to use this analogy that really we're all Americans, all Republicans, Democrats, Americans, and we should act like Americans and just try to not put the details so much important. Of course, it's mundane, but I guess I'm just trying to use that analogy that, okay, we may have differences, but we're all part of family. We're all like that. We're just trying to.
Mhm. Yeah, we have to be careful not to encourage too much division because it'll destroy us, divide and conquer. And that's another thing we might be looking out to. If American culture, like it's very divided, very polarized, it's a weakened situation, and other people will come in and say, okay, well, you guys can't seem to manage yourselves. We're just coming in and taking over.
Yeah. I have
So,
a comment, Maharaj, I have a comment to Lilaka. We
Okay.
offer Lilakar many times, and he's come Miami Reach to do a program that he likes. He has to put it together. We offered Lilakar to do a program for last 3-4 years to do a program that he likes to do, which means on the side of Krishna West. Unfortunately, so far, we don't have any one program, but we offer these things to different people, different programs. Like you say,
which person are we talking about?
Lilakar. I mean,
The one
Lilakar.
who just spoke to you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we offer these programs. Variety, if you want to do such a program, no problem. You can do it.
Yeah, I think that devotees, have fun taking different approaches,
Yeah.
just like I think we have a lot of fun with that. And just like, let's say we're all going to go out and have a pizza party. And,
Yeah.
the pizzas one has lots of olives on it. And some people like it with a lot of pineapple in it and, more cheese or less cheese, I think devotees, when it comes to pizza, it's like there's so many different likes and dislikes, different approaches, but it's all pizza. So why don't we share Krishna consciousness and employ our different approaches and go for it? Prabhupada seemed to want to, appeal to the intellectual class. He wanted us to appeal to the scientific class. He wanted us to appeal to the hippies, which was going on. He wanted us to appeal to to people who like to be entertained through artistic outlets. There was no limit. He wanted us to get to everybody. So to do that, you have to use maybe different kind of food. If you're going to talk to a bunch of Russian people, do not put chilies in the sabji. And just I'm just generalizing, but we have to be very, very accommodating.
Yes.
And why not? Like, if I go to Saudi Arabia, am I going to wear my dhoti and kurta? No, at least not in the beginning.
Yes.
If I want to do a walk across Saudi Arabia, I don't think I would do it with my dhoti and kurta, They're not going to take a liking to it, So I have to adjust to the climate or to the political, social situation. I have to be smart about it. It's called Bhakti Yoga is Buddha Yoga.
I think in reply to, respectfully speaking, in reply to what Jai Prabhu, we believe that we are attracting people, and they are feeling free to wear, basically, whether they want to wear traditional dress or other kinds of dress, they're feeling free. And we feel that ISKCON Miami Outreach is not forcing them or telling them, even indirectly, to tell them that you got to wear like this. Recently, we had some devotees here one of the most powerful Sankirtan parties in America. And they go on Sankirtan with devotees, and they do tremendous amounts of books. So at the same time, that's one of the positive things about ISKCON Miami Outreach, from my understanding, at least what Jayadwaj Prabhu is trying to present it to be. And also I try to follow in those footsteps as well, that there's not any force to say, okay, this is Bhakti Yoga, but in order to be a really Bhakti Yoga, you have to be like this, you have to be like this, you have to wear this, you have to put your tilak like this. It's just like, here's the science, like that.
Right, and I thank you. I appreciate what you're saying. And my experience is that whether you're a devotee or you're a pair of pants, what you really have to do is show kindness. And that's a language that everybody understands, that everybody responds to very nicely. I can be an intellectual, give a great talk or something like that in front of a group of people, but if I don't show them, after the class, I haven't shown kindness by giving them proper seats or some water available, or after it's over, if I don't offer snacks or somewhere, and if I don't smile and show general, like real sattvic qualities, if I don't display that, then people are not going to be that interested. If you really want to draw people, you have to show love. All you need is love.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the underlying principle. It doesn't matter this technique, that technique. The real thing that really shines like the sun is kindness, love, gentleness. Everybody can relate to that, because people are not having it. They're not experiencing it. There's so much loneliness and depression in the world now. People don't know how to hold anything together anymore. People are breaking up in their relationships all over the place, over a trivial little thing. They don't know how to live anymore. There's just no compromise, no give and take. It's we get ticked off so easily, even devotees sometimes. We got to be nice to each other, and then you'll see it works. When there's kindness, everything starts flowing. Everything starts melting.
Yeah, I agree with you, Miraj. We have one devotee. He's a god brother of mine, but he's also a big, huge part of ISKCON Miami Outreach. You probably know him. His name is Ananda Kirtan Prabhu, and he does a lot of service. And he also, I believe, he cooks the Sunday feast, but at the same time, most of the time, he's not wearing traditional dhoti. At the same time, he has big influence, and through that influence, other people become attracted as well. So I think that's one of the positive things that we're trying to reach here in ISKCON Miami Outreach, is try to attract all kinds of people, whether they want to go to whether they want to practice Bhakti Yoga in the traditional method, or they want to practice Bhakti Yoga in this method, like that.
Right. Good. Well, that's a good spirit, isn't it? Well,
All right.
Thank you so much.
We got the Maharaj. We got the next Sunday, we got the big memories night, and Jadurani is going to be there. So we are very open, and we accommodate Jadurani and Basu Ghosh Das. You know Basu Ghosh?
Yeah. We don't
He's
agree
here.
with some on some opinions.
Yeah. Basu Ghosh is going to give memories night, and Damodar Swami.
Nice. Wow. Beautiful. Thank you. I wish I was there to receive.
Okay, so we.
Thank you. We'll see you again sometime. All right.
When you coming, Maharaj? We're waiting for you.
Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you for the darshan. Maharaj, we are doing good. I'm meeting all God brothers and sisters. We are all doing good, Maharaj. We are practicing our bhakti. Okay, Jai Dharma, everybody. We are all meeting together once in a way, and we want your darshan whenever you are here. And we are doing good with the preaching center.
Remember what we said a few years ago, that if you concentrate on on giving out to people wisdom, the sacred sound, sacred wisdom, sacred sound, sacred food. If you all are united in these three areas, then you'll stay together like a family. You'll feel encouraged. Just like we finished in Canada, we finished the marathon. It was very successful. 22,000 Bhagavad Gitas in that month time. And we never thought we'd do it during this pandemic, but it makes everybody strong and very united.
Haribo.
Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Raja.
Hare Krishna.
Hare-
We'll be in contact with you.
Thank you. Jai.
Hare Krishna.